Hi, folks. I'm here in front of what was the home of James Pierpont, and he was one of the co-founders, along with Abraham Pearson, of this Yale University. James Pierpont. Pierpont was a hooker. His mother was a hooker. The hookers founded what is now Hartford, Connecticut, which is like 50 miles north of here, and it's the capital of the insurance business. And big history with the Whitneys. New Haven and Hartford have a huge history with the Whitney family. But the branch that I talk about Collins Whitney. They're a branch of the family, but they're a whole different breed. Believe me, John Hay Whitney, who killed JFK, I believe, and his father Payne Whitney, and Uncle Harry Whitney, and Collins Whitney. They're a whole different breed they're related to the Greater Whitney dynasty, which is 400 years old. There's Whitney names plastered all over the state of Connecticut. But James Pierpont, Reverend James Pierpont, mother was a hooker. See, now the hooker name pops up in the Kennedy assassination story. This building today is actually the visitor center for Yale. And like I said, Pierpont, there's a little museum in there. Some of the history of the college. But the hookers, see, first of all, the Rockefellers married Hooker. John Rockefeller III married Blanchett Ferry Hooker Rockefeller. And she was an heir to multiple fortunes. The Ferry fortune, that was big. They were big in agriculture. The dynasties were marrying dynasties. But George Marincci, the Hooker name is mentioned in Warren Commission documents. Edward Gordon Hooker. He was George Marinci's business partner in the 50s. They were in some kind of oil business. Who knows what kind of shady things they were involved in. They had their headquarters on the corner of, their New York City headquarters was on the corner of 57 and 5th Avenue, across from the Vanderbilts and the Whitneys. Well, the Whitneys lived right across the street. The Whitneys I'm talking about and the Vanderbilts lived right across the street. But when George was there, those mansions were demolished. But they still owned the air rights, and they put up a lot of office buildings and co-ops and business stores and things like that. They owned all that whole neighborhood. Although the mansions were gone, those families, the Vanderbilts and the Whitneys, they were very present, very much part of that. And George was living right in the middle of it. But George Marinci's business partner was Ed Hooker, who was George Bush's best friend. Now, they were skull and bones. And George Bush was photographed in Dealey Plaza with his preppy New England clothes on. I'm sure he was sent there to represent the Skull and Bones participating in killing JFK. Of course, they say it wasn't him, and it looks it's dead ringer for him. But, they're going to deny the obvious. Certain people are above the law. If you're a Yale, I guess you're above the law. If you're Skull and Bones, you're way above the law. Yeah, the hooker. Now, Pierpont was a hooker. Now, Prescott Bush, was what? The senator of Connecticut. He was a Connecticut senator. See, they were skull and bones. Prescott was skull and bones. George Herbert Walker Bush, or sometimes referred to him as Bush 41, was a skull and bones. And so wasn't his son, Bush 43. They were skull and bones. And of course, Ed Hooker was best friends with George Bush. And George Bush was the best man at his wedding. I think he even gave the bride away. How do I know that? It was in the New York Times. Their wedding was covered in, Ed Hooker's wedding was covered in the New York Times. Now, George Marincci, they were not only business partners, but George Marinci's brother married Ed Hooker's mother. Yeah. George Marinci's brother, Dimitri, who worked for the OSS during World War II, but George Marinci's brother, Dimitri, lived to be 100, married Ed Hooker's mother. She had a long name, too. She was married multiple times to rich people. I think it was Betty, Cartwright, Houlihan, Hooker, de Marincci, as per Warren Commission documents. How you doing? So all these names pop up as the Warren Commission documents. Of course, they're going to say, oh, it's just all coincidental. Yeah, everything's a coincidence, except for Oswald. Everybody's a coincidence but Oswald. Yes, that's what these elite do. They find innocent people and they paint them up as guilty, and then they walk away laughing. That's what these criminals do. Well, Pierpont, J.P. Morgan was a Pierpont, which means he was a hooker. You know, J.P. Morgan, the financial titan, and also a partner with John Rockefeller. I could get into the history of the collapse of the Knickerbocker Trust, but I don't think I'm going to, which was run by the Whitneys. I don't think I'm going to get into it now. It's just too much to cover, but it's in my books. And that was the birth of the Federal Reserve banking ripoff. I'm going to try all my effort. I'm going to use every effort in my bone not to get off. I'm really not off. I don't want to get too far from this Pierpont story. So I told you, the hooker married a Rockefeller. J.P. Morgan was a hooker. And Edward Hooker, of course, he was a hooker. He went by the name Edward Gordon Hooker. There's a Gordon name here. I seen the Gordon name here on this campus. And his father was Mather Hooker. I can see the Mather name. See, all these names were old dynastic families. See, that's why they carry their names. Often, like FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, those were all last names, surnames for wealthy dynastic and opium smuggling families. So they poisoned China with their opium, but they want to deny it. Well, the King of England was the biggest opium pusher in the world. The Dutch East India Company. The British East. Well, maybe the Dutch too. They were all related to King of England, anyways. But the British East India Company they were privateers. You know, they were going out and smuggling opium and trading slaves. These are not nice people. See, and then they made a fortune in opium, and the Reverend James Pierpont turned the campus over to Elihu. Maybe I'll just say Eli Yale. So this campus is named after an opium lord. And they don't want you to know that. See, they want to erase that history. That's why they put up all these memorials, to make you think they glorify their names, and they're not. I know their past. That's why they hate me. They want to erase their past. But I keep regurgitating. And there's no reason these people have changed. There's been nothing to rehabilitate these people. They've never been punished. They've never been called out, barely called out. And if you call them out, you get trampled. You know, if you speak the truth, the truth can hurt a lot of people. If people are trying to hide their past. But then again, Ed Hooker was George Bush's best friend, and George Bush was photographing Dealey Plaza, and then he became, director of the CIA during the time of Watergate. So they say, the CIA killed Kennedy. Well, who was running the CIA? The Bush family? Also, there was another name in the CIA, too. His name was Tracy Barnes. He was head of the Division of Plans for the Western Hemisphere during the Bay of Pigs invasion. Howard Hunt worked for him. Howard Hunt, Watergate guy. I told you who ordered Watergate was Rockefeller's. He's a Whitney, too. Tracy Barnes is a Whitney. They're related. Like second cousins to John Hay Whitney, who I call out as being one of the people who killed JFK. I can't get into all that now. You got to read my book, because it's a big story. So, yeah, John Hay Whitney, yeah. Yeah, the Knickerbocker Bank was run by the Whitneys. See, because Charles Tracy Barney married a Whitney. He married Colin Whitney's sister. And Colin Whitney married Colonel Oliver Payne's sister. Oliver Payne was one of the original co-founders of Standard Oil. So that's why they put up these massive buildings like Payne Whitney Gym, 11 stories. These are just monuments to glorify, to cover up their crimes. And this is what the Rockefellers did with the Rockefeller Ripoff Foundation and the Ford Foundation. Of course, William Clayton Ford was part of Wilsed, Henry Ford's grandson, one of their big three secret societies. And yeah, this is what these people did. They glorified themselves with these gifts, but I don't believe they're gifting anybody. But I want to talk about another guy, Silliman. There's a Silliman College here, and his tie to the history of Standard Oil and petroleum. It's a major factor. I'm not going to say he was involved in killing JFK. You know, Yale had a massive research. They were doing all kinds of cutting edge research here. most of which is secret. I want to get over to the Dr. Harvey Cushing and the John Hay Whitney Medical Records campus over here and try to show you that. And it ties to Oswald, it ties to MK Ultra, it ties to the Kennedy assassination. Goes on and on and on, these families. But it's a massive story. Okay, so I came here to tell you, Pierpont descendant Edward Gordon Hooker was mentioned in Warren Commission documents as business partner to George Brinchees, and George Brinchees was Oswald's closest associate in providing with all kinds of stuff. Although in their testimonies they try to they're very forgetful of dates and times, and they go into, this is all part of their shtick. They go into, their forgetfulness and, denialship. And that's what they do. And then, Oswald wanted attention. That word attention actually came from George Brinchees' testimony. And not in regards to him killing JFK, but he's just saying, well, I can't get into it all now. Read my book, Clash of Dynasties. I got a new one coming out. Not right away, though. You don't want to wait for the new one. It's going to be 1,000 pages of truth. Don't get too caught up in this dog and pony show in Washington about declassified documents. That's just one more. How many times do you want to be lied to by the government? You got the Warren Commission cover-up. You got the House Assassination Committee cover-up. You got the Church Committee cover-up. Now you got this thing going on now, declassified documents covered up. I'm going to try to scoot over to Silliman College and the John Hay. I'm going to show you the headquarters, the tomb of Scroll and Key, John Hay Whitney's place. Okay. See you in a few.